this is a great country. There's so much opportunity, voids out there that if you can find a solution and fill that void, you can potentially build a very valuable business.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Bref here with another episode of the Aesthetics Growth Podcast. And I'm really excited to welcome Paul Herchman to the show today. We're going to be talking about innovation. Paul's got an incredible story that we're going to catch as much as we can on the episode today. Paul, great to meet you. Thanks so much for joining on the show. Paul, you want to give us a little teaser as to some of the things that we're going to talk about today and an introduction as to who you are?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Bref, I appreciate you including me in your series here. Greatly appreciated. And yeah, so, we can maybe talk a little bit about, I'm near the end of my career and have had a lot of experiences, some really good experiences, some really tough, bad experiences that all kind of can, accumulate together to, ultimately how you make decisions and in business models and all. And we can talk about, Get Here MD and, why I kind of came out of retirement and, some of the things that, we're trying to do in partnering with physicians. And I'm truly passionate about a business model that we're introducing. And Bref, that's really what brought me out. Mm-hmm. I think there's a better way to do business with aesthetics across the country. And so we're attempting to, really lay that out clearly for people.
Awesome. Love it. I love it. And one thing, because I recently listened to, one of the interviews that you had done recently with a common acquaintance of ours and just your journey. And I think it really is significant to talk about, when we're in business and life and going through different seasons is that journey. Yeah. And Paul, how would you describe your journey within business and aesthetics? And, you've got a vast range of experience. Could you maybe just talk to us a little bit about that? Where you've come from a business, a life standpoint, and as a dad growing a business, what really resonated with me particularly was, and maybe we can get into it, is growing a family while growing a business. Like not easy. Right. I know there's a lot of people out here that might resonate, but Paul, I'll hand it over to you. I'd love to learn a bit more about your journey, and I know that a lot of our listeners and viewers would too.
Well, thank you. I'll try not to get too long-winded. So, my background was basically sales and marketing, but I grew up, in a family that was, deep in entrepreneurism. And, most of my life, my first thing, I sold Christmas cards door to door, I just like your typical entrepreneurs, and then was involved in, businesses. So while I, began my journey early on, with medical sales, got a job with J&J, selling birth control pills, vaginal therapeutics. It was really the lessons that I learned and, building a business, but in a new environment, right? In the healthcare environment. So, which I found to be very, very fruitful. And this is a great country. There's so much opportunity, voids out there that if you can find a solution and fill that void, you can potentially build a very valuable business.
Yeah. Yep.
So the first company, Medical Alliance, I was trying to sell technologies to physicians. It was mainly gynecology, and there was a new gynecologist. When a woman has an abnormal pap, they have to do an ablation or a lead to remove the abnormal tissue. So we had a brand new laser at the time, a company called Sharpland, which is bought by Luminous. They had a portable laser for OBGYNs to do procedures in their office, and so I started talking to a bunch of OBGYNs about how great it would be. And they thought this would be great, but they said, Herchman, we're not writing you a check for $50,000 because, this is all kind of new to us. And so I thought, hey, is this an opportunity Is this an opportunity to put technologies together and make it available for physicians that want to do those procedures in their office to allow them to do that? And it turned out it was a great idea. So we ended up purchasing technologies in women's healthcare, gynecology, and then also expanded into aesthetics. Because even as aesthetics, began early on in the 90s, man, those lasers everything was so expensive, so scary. Early on technologies, and physicians wanted to get involved, but this is a great way for them to participate without putting their own capital at risk.
For sure. And, one thing as well, I think, back then too, with the growth of aesthetics and some of the technology that you were working on, there's the insurance driven aspect, specifically in pain management, right? Where, one of your companies had that opportunity, but then within that growing cash medicine and aesthetics business also. How did you kind of, look at that, decide, make decisions based off, where you saw opportunity and growth, and also looking at your philosophy of that, kind of that physician growth as well? How did you approach that, Paul?
Well, I really have always found great interest in changing trends in the industry. For instance, in '89, if you think back, the big push was by insurance companies to push procedures out of the hospital into a surgery center. And then those surgery centers were owned by physicians, and I don't think that payors got quite the bang for their buck that they had hoped. And so they were really interested in us helping them drive procedures out to the lowest cost setting, which was the physician office. So it was that trend for driving procedures to a low cost setting, but with the creation of new technology, and it's still true today, that technology makes those procedures easier, more comfortable, safer. They get more sophisticated so that the user, it's not as dependent upon that user. It's dependent upon that user to follow the guidelines and the parameters that are within that device. So it becomes safer and easier to do. But it was really that trend that drove that. And then aesthetics, it was another trend. Hey, physicians that were, trying to diversify their practice. Their revenues were all based upon insurance, and that's still today a great desire by physicians to diversify their income stream. But it was really driven there. And so when aesthetics started, and dermatologists primarily at that time, and some plastic surgeons were, looking to bring those technologies in, and we made it really, really easy for them. We were the largest purchaser of aesthetic lasers in the U.S. We built a company. We were in 42 states doing 5,000 procedures a month. Took the company public in '96. We're NASDAQ traded, and then sold the company to ICM Pharmaceutical, who Valiant bought. Right.
Talk about Thermi, is that right?
Yeah. Well, now Thermi came downstream.
Okay.
Yeah, so Valiant bought Medical Alliance, and then after that, we looked at the market, and I believed that this crazy thing called MedSpas was going to be an important part of the delivery system in aesthetics. And in the early 2000s, it was an idea. And people were saying they thought it was a good idea, and physicians were beginning to do that. But you could look at the marketing. You knew that, with dermatologists and plastic surgeons, there was no way that they could take care of this huge onslaught of patients that potentially were coming their way with toxins and fillers and skincare and devices. Right. And so it just made a lot of sense. And of course, you look now and you see a med spa on every corner, right?
Yep. The growth is tremendous. And, you obviously, as an innovator, within business, with, growing businesses to big exits, you've seen that continued growth, those trends. And, we'll maybe come back a little bit to, those early days. Yeah. But as we're looking, today with the growth of your, one of your newer businesses with Get Hair MD, for example, you want to talk a little bit about that, about, where that came from. I know that you took a little pause in between after an exit, but, just love to understand, especially with ideas and business ideas, because we can have a lot of them, right? And you probably have, ideas brought to you every other day. How did you assess that? How did you approach that from a business ownership standpoint, a team perspective, from, idea validation to where you are today?
Yeah, good question. What I've learned, there's 3 steps that I think we all look at. Everybody's like, hey, I've got an idea, right? Who doesn't have an idea? They're frankly a dime a dozen, even though you don't know the difference between a good idea and a bad idea. And so you have the conception part of, I've got an idea. And then the next most difficult phase is, let me develop a business plan, that could take advantage of, my idea and the void that's in the market that we're going to fill. And that's where you lose about 90% of the people with good ideas. is they're not able to go to the next step to really put together a business plan that makes sense. And then even from those, the next 90% that you get cut out are those that from an implementation perspective, because that's where it's really difficult, right?
Yeah.
Is even though you have a good plan, it's how you begin to implement, and thus that's why probably 90% of startups fail even after you've gone through conceive, develop, and implement. And so that is where you really see a lot of drop off there. But that's one of the things you hope to hopefully learn in your career as you've had your failures and done the wrong things and made the wrong moves to hopefully get better and better at implementing with what we're trying to do with Get Here MD.
For sure. I mean, our team here, for example, is reading a book right now, Extreme Ownership. I read it a number of different times. It's that whole plan and execute. And as you said, with ideas being a dime a dozen, the fallout is going to be huge there from that execution standpoint.
Right.
Paul, when it came to you mentioned those you have those ideas, you'll try something. There's a failure, but you keep on going. You keep on pushing forward. What kind of challenges did you experience in those, maybe those early years that have maybe shaped you from a person, have shaped how you've approached business? And, with those failures along the way, there's been some huge successes, obviously, with, some of the businesses that you've grown and where you are today with multiple locations. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of opportunity to fail out there. And even as smart as we are and what we're doing with Get Here MD, there are quagmires to the left and the right, that you can certainly, get into. And for me and for us in building Get Here MD, what I've learned is I go from a nail it, scale it mentality. And that is, can you do one, right? And if you can do one, can you do two? If you can't do one or two, there's no more discussion. You're frankly probably not something that's going to go forward, but you continue to nail it, scale it, and you try to, and no matter how smart you are, and how much experience you have, there's still a large percentage of your assumptions that just aren't right. Because plans, the best battle plan looks great until you get into the battle, right? And you run up against the enemy.
So true.
And so you're switching, but I always hope to fail fast with the assumptions in your business that aren't quite right. And you hope to fail fast and be able to change them and spin in a new direction, which is what we've done, for sure here with Get Here MD.
Awesome. Love it. And, nail it, scale it. I love that. How have you been able to, to quantify that? When do you determine when you've nailed it? When is the right time to scale it?
For us, it was, we did one center. First center we opened was February of 2020 with COVID hit. So I think 3 weeks later, we shut down and that laser was sitting in my house. But
wow.
Which I got benefit from that, but nobody else did. And
COVID, tough time to start, but like you said, you started at a tough time, and there were obviously challenges with that, but you persevered. I'd love to explore that more. And you started it was in that DFW market with the first location for Get Here MD, right?
Correct. Started here, and then we set out for a year and reopened in February 2021. Took our assumptions, owned our center, made the changes, made the tweaks, opened another, made the changes, made the tweaks, we merged, made an acquisition of a laser manufacturer that emerged with us, to change our, to really change our trajectory so that we weren't just the purchaser and a good customer of all these customers, of all these products that we wanted to use, but now we're in the supply chain side ourselves, which allows you to have, better income from, better profits as you open and sell the zones. And then we partner with a lot of other manufacturers out there, because what our physicians are committed to is we want to build the most trusted brand, Get Here MD, in the world. And we're going to do that off the experience and the drive of our physicians, our clinical advisory board, because especially, a lot of the plastic surgeons in here, they're very diligent about making sure that the data's there, that the studies are reputable, that you can prove and validate all that we're doing. And so, we've really come through that now where the whole group of products and services that we provide have a ton of data, and, it really, really works. And so after that, and we had the 10 locations in DFW, now we're in the growth mode, and we're trying to open up new locations out across the country. And so that's really what we're working on right now as far as the stage of the company.
Love it. Love it. And there's a ton of momentum associated with where you guys are right now. Obviously, after, validating, like you said, with those physician partners, having the buy-in, and obviously, having them to generate those outcomes for local patients. You guys have done how many procedures approximately, Paul, since the conception of Get Hair MD? How many hair?
Oh gosh, man, I've lost track. I've literally, I'm sorry, I've lost track because we have so many locations out there. So I don't want to put a number out there.
How many locations as of today? And it's
we have
September the 5th.
14 as of today.
14 today. Awesome.
Yeah.
And what are you hearing from the physician partners? What's exciting them? With the growth you're experiencing, there's obviously a lot of momentum. There's more locations coming on board. What are they excited about in their local marketplaces when they're maybe looking at, like you said, there's alternatives out there? What are you seeing as that kind of driving force that is really building that momentum for Get Hair MD?
I think one of the things that interests them most is the fact that we give them, or they when they purchase everything from us, they get exclusive territories. It's their geography, and we protect them. They know what they have. They know that we're not going to put a competitor into that particular zone, because there's a lot of distaste in physicians' mouths that have purchased a technology only to find out that same technology is now in all these physicians in the same office building, or physicians within the same neighborhood. And what happens there is, while everybody's intentions are to have to deliver those procedures at a certain price, pretty soon somebody just breaks rank, and the only differentiation they have is price, and then they'll advertise the price. And if the technology is reliable and repeatable, it really is can be a race to the bottom for those practices. So we're trying to eliminate that by making sure that physicians have huge territories with all the people, many people that have hair loss and can afford to pay for it in those zones.
Yep, for sure. And when it kind of goes back to maybe validating that marketplace, my brother, for example, he went through the hair restoration journey himself, and there's millions, right, maybe close to 100 million just Americans that are affected by hair loss. What does that data look like? What trends are you seeing? What do those total addressable markets look like in an average region for the Get Hair MD partners?
So when we looked at the market, there's 83 million people that have hair loss, and we filtered through that and took everybody out that's too old or maybe has another condition that they wouldn't potentially be a prospect for the physicians that are working with us. And we took that number, and the next big filter that we had to do through there was who can afford to pay for this, right? Yep. And so we took out, it's really not the right cut. We took everybody that doesn't make $100,000 and took them out of the numbers that we were looking at. Although, frankly, a lot of our patients are average Joes. I mean, they do make less than $100,000, but just for the sake of coming up with the market, we took them out. Everybody that makes over $200,000 is included in our number, and in between $100,000 and $200,000, there's a percentage associated. Probably at 150, half of those people are in there, and still that number is enormous. And based upon the capacities that can be delivered in the treatment sites that we have, we saw that it would take 11,700 treatment sites, 5 years at double the capacities that we even try to guide those practices to treat all the people that aren't too old, aren't too young, have hair loss, and can afford to pay for procedures to stop their hair loss.
Plenty of opportunity in those local markets is what I'm hearing there.
plenty of opportunity, and that's what really drove us to do business when what I think is a better way. I think this is a better way to do business for our partners, our physician partners, and from a company, we want to build value. We want to put together a company that has, the type of profits and EBITDA and revenues that would drive value for our shareholders. And the better partner we are, the better job we do at driving value, the better partner we are to our physicians as we build this, overall brand. But, with Thermi, which is the last company that we built and sold, and we were the top healthcare deal in Dallas, sold it for $83 million, had no private equity, no venture capital, mainly physician investors, and built an international, company from that. And, we didn't have, Thermi was a great success, and there's many companies out here that have great success, but, to dream of 10,000 placements, that's building as big a business, I think, as most product companies could imagine building to still give, tremendous success.
That's huge. Well, you're already on your way with growing this number of locations, and that really is huge when you look at the numbers associated with that. The model for Get Hair MD, Paul, is that 100% privately raised? How are you guys currently raising capital? Is there a certain criteria that you have when it comes to growing over the next couple of years? Things that you're looking into the future to put together there?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because we are raising some capital.
Okay.
And the thing about startups, what I have a tendency to do is raise enough capital to develop what needs to be developed and get that company over the next hurdles. And you get over the next hurdles, and you've created more value. Mm-hmm. And as you create more value, more experience, more validation, then you can potentially continue to raise, the price per share, which creates less dilution and gives your potential investors, a bigger glimpse at what all has been accomplished. So for us, I'd funded it along for a while after, the great liquidity event with Thermi. Then we raised some capital after growing a number of patients, and we had a clear vision of where we wanted to go. We raised some capital in Q4 2019. The Synetics, we acquired them, or they merged with us. We created, more value, opened more centers, put, more and more together. And then, now we're raising 2.7, of which I've raised 1.7. And so we still have $1 million that's left. So make sure and, give my phone number out to anybody.
Okay. All right. Anybody listening? I'm sure Paul will share some contact details towards the end of the show. Hey, so a quick message. Don't get right back to the show. This episode is brought to you by ClinicGrower, my growth marketing agency that helps medical spas and aesthetic practices to scale sustainably with multi-channel marketing, with smart automation and real-world conversion strategies. Now, I know that might sound a little bit vague, and that's because growing your business isn't really a one-size-fits-all formula. Every practice is going to be different, and so should your marketing plan too. So at ClinicGrower, we offer a completely free marketing audit, a growth plan that's customized for you and for your business. This is going to include a full analysis of your current presence, your current marketing, your local competition, and also a roadmap, a growth plan designed to help you to attract more high-quality patients and to increase your revenue and to grow your business. So if you want to scale with clarity and confidence, just head over to clinicgrower.com/schedule to book your free consultation. That's clinicgrower.com/schedule. Now back to the show. Yeah. Paul, with the growth, you guys are at 17 locations. Is that right? 14. What are your projections? Is that something you can share for, looking towards 24, 25, just based off, market, based off the momentum that you're seeing?
So our projections we want to be at 30 centers by the end of this year. And then we'd like to be, a little less than 100 by the end of 2024. And, our objective, this is a huge market. We're building a platform that can actually be an international platform, for the countries that are, more like US from an economic perspective.
Yeah.
But, what we intend to do is we will be looking to recapitalize the company, or to look for a strategic that wants to go build a worldwide organization. So we have put, we're assembling the products, building some ourselves, and then we put this business in a box together. And then these business processes can be do anywhere across the country. With Thermi, we were having to sell 400 or 500 systems a year just to survive and be able to feed machines. So this is a little bit, it's a little bit different than that. But we think that, when we get to that point of close to 100, that we'll create, first of all, a ton of value for our shareholders, and we'll have a very clear business opportunity for someone that, basically says, okay, Herchman, so you guys put in $4 million, let's go put in 50, right? Let's build the organization to implement at a faster rate across the world.
Awesome. Well, love what you said, Paul, as far as the business in a box, right? And what does that currently look like for a new location, a new practice coming on board? And maybe you can talk a little bit about the avatar, the profile of those practices. I know that you're working with a lot of plastic surgeons currently. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that type of practice is and what that business in a box looks like currently for them today?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're attacking this a little bit different. There's some great companies out there that people recognize, like Bosley and Restore. I mean, I'm here to officially say they're great companies and they do a good job, but it seems like their focus may be a little bit different. I think that, a lot of, they focus a lot of transplant, maybe more up front. And what we think the larger market is the non-invasive applications. Why some of the companies I mentioned may be 90 to 95% male, because that's where most of the grafting is. Not trying to say I know their numbers exactly or their percentages, but with us, we're 51% women and 49% men. And when we attacked it with a full portfolio of non-invasive applications. And because of that, 40% of women have hair loss issues as well. Guys 50% of guys have hair loss issues, but I think that's what people's thoughts are primarily, is more about men and grafting. But the greater market, the bigger, broader market is this non-invasive piece, including women. Because, as guys, we don't want to lose our hair. And, many of us will fight that. And it's not a fun thought, but as a woman, for them to have hair loss, it is traumatic. It's a totally different scenario than for a man to lose their hair. So they're very motivated.
Well, I can definitely appreciate that. And also the fact that, you guys are growing, kind of, really tapping in or serving that potentially underserved portion of the market. Paul, with the growth and communication, messaging, what is working really well for Get Hair MD? What is working from either, partnership, growth, marketing? How has that been for the company? Is there any insights there that you'd like to share relative to the growth and how marketing and partnerships have performed?
Well, we continually look so Bref, we met you guys.
Right.
And
Yep.
we met you guys through a physician that we respect, and I've always admired what a great business he has. He always has a robust business. And so, I'm talking, how you doing that? And he mentioned you guys.
Right.
And so,
yep.
That's an example of how we will continue to keep our ears open and move over and try to find the best partners that we can find. And for us, we can validate, we can show you, we can stop the hair loss fast. And we can, give you the best that medical science has to offer to stop your hair loss and regrow your hair. And then those that need grafting, our physicians can do the grafting, after that. But the scientific side, the medical side of, doing the devices and doing the treatments, that is super easy. That is easy. It's very clear. Follow the protocol and you administer as needed. But the tough part is building a business in that practice that is consistent and profitable. And so that's why so much of what we do with our partners is bringing the business resources in there that we think are best in class, that can help, first of all, build that practice internally, because as they look internally, half of the people, 50% of men, 40% of women, they have hair issues. So if they do a great job, of even marketing internally, they're going to build a great business. And then in working with companies like you to get that word out and drive new patients into into that practice is something that is super important to us. And we need to continue to be really, really good at that. But the cool thing about it is, what we hear from our physicians is when we bring a new patient in and they go to that practice and, they're in there frequently, especially at first, getting the procedures, and there's no pain associated with it. It's a really great experience. And guess what? Those patients end up having new procedures done.
100%.
And it's probably not even part of, we ought to lay that out in our ROI, but a huge percentage of them, they fall in love with the practice. Now their hair is looking better, and guess what? They think that they may want to do some other procedures. So that's a big
For sure.
practice too.
That's, like you said, a great opportunity for that practice to meet new patients, perhaps, that obviously have the specific need for hair restoration. But when it comes to the other services those practices offer, it's a great opportunity to get that new patient in the door, experiencing that practice. And one thing you mentioned as well, Paul, was the ROI component. And would you mind talking about that just a little bit? Because I know from looking at some of the data, even just from tapping into an existing database, there's opportunity for these practices. And then you start to expand on that reach and the support that you provide from that kind of that getting started standpoint, that really puts those practices in a great position to be able to really thrive in those early days and then growing that part of their business into the future.
Right. And look, that makes me think about it. We're kind of in some uncertain times right now. They're a little choppy economically. I think we're all optimistic, but there's some fear and uncertainty and doubt out there, with a lot of people. So for us, what I've learned, and even the way we run this company now, we want to be incredibly capital efficient, right? We want to get to our first thing you want to do is execute your business plan and quit burning cash, right? And I think it's the same thing for physicians. If you bring something else into your practice, the first thing that you want to do is integrate it, implement it, but you want to be, number one, quit burning cash, and then you're making money. So what's cool for us is just, again, the market's huge, and a physician's break even, depending on the package, to cover the cost of their investment, is from 1 to 2 new patients that buy a package, a month. So their ability to get in the game, hold steady, wait for the economy to come back, wait for things to pick up. It's a really, really safe thing for them to do. But then if you look at the return, I think they can get a complete ROI on this thing, with 50 patients.
Wow.
So it's a low number, but the upside, for them can be, really, really better. And what we're telling them, look, the brand Get Hair MD, it's nowhere near what it's going to be. They're just getting in at this price. Our objective is to drive that brand, make it the most trusted brand, again, which we'll do really off the backs and in partnership with the key opinion leaders and the physicians that work with us. It's their clinical credibility that's a part of the whole thing. We're just the business guys trying to do what they're telling us we need to do and implement and execute, execute there.
And that's, the wow there was 1 or 2 patients per month, and then they're in an ROI positive situation relative to the necessity in markets to serve these patients. That's I don't know the numbers, but a small percentage, I'm sure, a fraction of the market in most areas, right?
You can't really measure it. And the other piece that we have, that while we're different, number one, territory, right? The zone. Think of it as a franchise. They own that. All right. And we have physicians, things change, right? Practices get purchased. Somebody gets sick, whatever it is, we're there with them. And we don't care, we just want to have a good partner. And if it turns out that something changes in the position that, they want us to make a change, we're there to help them. We just want a good partner in there to utilize our processes and all that we do. But by owning this territory, when typically with you own a device, right? You buy a device and you depreciate it quickly, and your biggest upside is you make money and sell it on the used equipment market for nothing, right? for us, yeah, there's equipment in it. That's an important part of it. But as we drive value, it's that zone that people will want. And we have even talked with physicians, and we got some advisory services about how we help physicians structure this, because there are. I had a conversation last week with someone that we said, look, we build out this platform, and we have physicians that own that zone, and they are showing you the revenues that they're getting, Get Hair MD. Would you be interested in purchasing that? And the answer is, yeah, we would. So we're also giving doctors, some of them get the opportunity to have a liquidity event. As you know, there's a lot of that going on right now.
Yep.
A lot in the roll-up, but a lot don't. Many, many more are left out than are included in that because they don't have the revenues or the EBITDA or another reason. But we think we're going to give them an opportunity to have their own liquidity event. So those doctors that when the timing's right, when the brand is made, and when someone really wants to go, there's going to be, we think, an entity that would say, you know what, we'd love to have 80 Get Hair MD footprints across the country. And so that's another conversation that I'm not aware that anybody's even able to have with physicians.
That certainly seems like, with those partners, and maybe it's early partners, but there's opportunity for some really big upside as part of that growth as you're developing the brand, from 1 to 14 within a couple of years, with COVID associated with it. So tremendous opportunity there with that growth and trends, perhaps. Where do you see Get Hair MD going in the next 5-10 years as part of the overall growth in aesthetics? And someone who's been within the industry for a number of decades, what do you see that looking like? The aesthetics growth overall, and then Get Hair MD within that.
I see us even further, with again, we're capitalizing the company only to go so fast, right?
Yeah.
But it's frankly at this point manpower and capital in a master plan. So, I've already, to our surprise, gotten inquiries about, what we're doing as an entity. Because number one, if you're a physician, you should work with us. You should own that territory. You should be a part of building the brand. And the better job we do, the higher that, your zone will go up, and we will all do better. But even when you look in the environment, I have, the last 3 years, the meetings I've been to, the strategic meetings, right, where you have private equity, venture capital, industry, et cetera, on the podium saying, hey, here, what's happening, where's it going? The where it's going, a lot of it is about hair loss, and how if you look, besides a couple of companies that are really, really focused on grafting, who has seriously, put a brand out to capture the market. That's what we're trying to do. And so, and I actually anticipate on our own, we'll go build 100, but I will not be surprised if someone steps in and says, hey, we love what you're doing. Let's go do 1,000.
That's exciting. That is really exciting. When it comes to those keys to success, Paul, for someone who may be considering adding this to part of their portfolios, part of their practice, what have you seen the keys to success are for those practices? Is there certain must-haves, certain types of requirements or criteria that you see contributing towards the most successful clinics?
Well, we particularly enjoy clinics that have a big patient base. And even those that, if you have a big patient base, but you've been grafting for 2 years, the story's a little muddled because we're not about grafting, but it's hard to maybe get that message apart. I think our best partners are those that have not really recognized how big the hair loss market is, and that can go after the greater market, the bigger market with non-invasive. And so I think those do great, but then, you have practices, everybody doesn't have the same assets, right? You have practices that don't have that, they maybe don't have the base that they want. And that's where working with companies like you and the choices that we make, with physicians is the level of help that they need and the investment that they need and what we all need to do to get them to the point that, where they need to be. And I mean, we're doing some really unique things, even with brand ambassadors. We've gotten the first brand ambassador that we got's a guy named Chris Gronkowski, and I'm sure
Football,
yeah.
right? Yeah, yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe there's something else with like surfing. You guys have definitely a lot of influencers lined up from what I've been seeing and hearing.
Yeah, we do. We've got their ability to, because influencers want to monetize their follower, their
Correct.
base, right? And so half the men, 40% of the women have hair issues. And so we do have a mobile program because everybody's not near a center. And that's the other thing we learned is when we're advertising and trying to drive patients, if you're not near a center, we waste our money, and they want to do something, but they don't know what to do. And so, with a mobile program, we're able to enable anybody anywhere to, the main thing is don't wait. If you have hair loss, you can save your hair. Just get started. And the earlier, the better. And so we enable them to do that. But with the mobile program, with the influencers, we're able for their sales and marketing efforts that they make, we can make it, well worth their while as well.
Awesome. So much opportunity. You guys are in a lot of respects, still just getting started with that growth. That's super exciting to hear. What about when it comes to a practice who's getting started, Paul? What does that support look like? Someone who's interested in getting started, those first, 30, 60, 90 days, that first year, how does that look for that practice?
Well, so it would be, programs with you guys. Where, for instance, talk a little bit about what you guys are doing when you're working with us.
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. I mean, with our approach, for example, when we're introducing new products to new markets or essentially just helping a segment of a patient base, it's about that awareness, getting the interest from the appropriate patients. You were talking about that targeting component, and then really it's education. A lot of it comes down to educating that patient. Number one, there's 5 degrees of awareness. So are they, number one, are they product aware, problem aware, leading them through that type of awareness so that they can then understand if they're looking between alternatives. And with Get Hair MD, the non-invasive component, the patient outcomes, those before and afters, those testimonials, making that patient feel really good about that process to the point where they feel comfortable with coming in for that conversation. There's vulnerability there, right? For for most patients that are experiencing a condition or an issue, and certainly for hair restoration. So it's about building that confidence, and to get confidence, preparation, knowledge, and then having an approach to take that patient from perhaps just maybe problem aware right down to coming into the practice for their consultation, and then having us, for example, what we do is we'll also support that practice through that conversion, making sure it's a really good patient experience. Right. There's congruency right through the messaging, and right through to that patient, coming in for follow-ups and continuing that journey through the practice, and obviously that revenue generation journey for the practice as well.
And there you go. That's why we love working with you guys, because that is hard to do, and it's magical when you make it do it. And so you've got that piece, and then another. We have other resources, because some people, there's a huge difference in closing, right? Mm-hmm. You see some practices that close, and the centers we were running, we were at 40%, right? And then you get some practices that don't do as well. So we, as a partner too, have resources to go in with them and, teach them even the functionality of the practice, how you don't, how quickly you answer that, right? And how you don't let them fall through the cracks, and
correct.
How quickly you get them. So we have, diverse training there to support, what you guys are doing. And then, do you need an open house? Do you need do we have the ability to do a mailing with cosmetic headlines, a new publication local, and we try to continue to just build those on that. We'll give them the athlete. We'll try to find an athlete that we try to find. Sometimes it's a little bit slower, but somebody that is right near that practice, and they want to get involved, and then we've got that piece too to drive.
I love it. It's really 360, right down from like local influencers, fully fledged support and marketing. Very, very, very exciting.
Yeah,
Paul, man, I know there's a lot more questions that I could have asked. We've only got a certain amount of time for the podcast today, but certainly anybody who is interested in what we're discussing here about Get Hair MD, I mean, your success in growing businesses, what would you recommend is the most appropriate way for anybody who's watching or listening to find out more information about you, about Get Hair MD, and to potentially get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest thing and the most reliable would be my email, which would be paul.h@gethairmd.com, paul.h@gethairmd.com. People can call me if they care to as well. My cell number, 214-766-1718. But look, just have a conversation and let's explore it. This is really different. That's the other thing we've learned.
Yeah.
This is really different. I mean, physicians, you got to sit back and let us take you a chance to take you through it. But it'll be well worth their time to do that.
Awesome. And lots to unpack from the show today. And Paul, I know that we could do like a whole series just based off your experience. You've done this before when it comes to growing businesses. You've overcome a lot of challenges. With the growth opportunity within aesthetics, within your segment, within hair loss and treating patients for that massive opportunity. So I just want to thank you for being on the podcast today. It's a pleasure to get to speak with you again. And if there's anybody who's listening, if they just, is there any particular piece of advice, for example, that has served you well over the years, over your, the failures, the successes? If there's somebody out there that's listening, they're growing a practice or growing a business, any particular words of wisdom or a quote or something that you might like to share with them?
Well, I will tell you what I've learned most in my journey. I've learned that it's bigger than us, and the things that you don't control, look, you better outwork everybody. You better be smarter than everybody, and you better be able to implement and execute your own thing. But let me tell you, what I learned is that all the things we don't control are what can make the difference. The timing, the market, the economy, just the trends, the technology, all those things are what drive it. And so for me, what I walked away with was, a Bible verse with Thermi when we had my biggest success ever, which was Ecclesiastes 9:11. And that is, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, no bread to the wise, nor riches to men of fortune, but time and chance happeneth to them all. And so that's what I learned, is do your best, but be appreciative of when things are going good. It's not just you.
I love that. I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. I think that is the way to approach life as well. You got to celebrate those wins. You got to be relentless, keep pushing forward. And also just remember that big picture as well, help as many people as you can along the way.
That's right.
Awesome. Paul, thanks so much. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining another episode of the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Hey, it's Bref here with ClinicGrower, and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're loving the Aesthetics Growth Podcast, go ahead and hit that like or hit that subscribe, more importantly, so that we can keep bringing you the best of the industry. I really want this to be impactful and the highest quality, and the best way that you can help us to do that is to hit that like, hit that subscribe. And remember, if you would like to be a guest on the Aesthetics Growth Podcast, go to clinicgrower.com/podcast.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.